What's going on, everybody? C4 here. Welcome back to more C4. And a couple hours ago, had to tuck the kiddos to bed, so couldn't instant react to this. The Philadelphia Eagles announced that they've re-signed Zack Baun on a 3-year, $51 million contract, 34 of that guaranteed. Averages about $17 million a year, puts him as the fourth highest paid linebacker in the league behind Fred Warner, Roquan Smith. Okay, that makes sense. Less money than what the Bears paid Tremaine Edmonds. The fact that Howie Roseman was able to get that under this number is insane. It's insane work. Howie Roseman's, It seems like a different person. The Jalen Rager, the J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, all that stuff. It's just a different guy. It doesn't even exist anymore. He's so far distant from that. And the money, man. Zack Baun's a weird... I'm going to put this in a Madden context. You play Madden, you'll get this. Middle linebackers in Madden, when they're free agents, cost considerably less than an off-ball outside linebacker. Because those guys get kind of meshed in with edge rushers, like 3-4 edge rushers. And that kind of applies to Zack Baun in a way, because he absolutely is every bit of an off-ball linebacker. We saw it time and time again, sideline to sideline plays, shedding blocks, dropping back into coverage, covering tight ends, covering running backs. But then we'd also line him up on the line of scrimmage. We'd also blitz him a whole lot. He literally did everything a universal linebacker would do. And if he hit the open market, let's say maybe a team in their pitch to his agent, we're like, hey, I think he can rush the passer a little bit more. Well, he goes, hey, I think we should need to get a couple more zeros on this contract. You're viewing me as a pass rusher. So he's when you have a hybrid player like that, it's weird where the value is going to be. And the fact that we were able to get him in reasonable market value for an off-ball linebacker when he does so many other things is insane work from the Philadelphia Eagles. And it's been a minute. As a fan base collectively, everyone wants one guy to return. Everyone wants one contract extension. Above all, in a year where there's really 4 guys that are integral pieces to our Super Bowl team that we're potentially losing. The fact that there's just one clear-cut guy that we had to bring back, and we were able to get that done, is outstanding. I'm excited for mock drafts now. I don't have to constantly try to think about who we can get to replace Zack Baun, because he is here for another 3 years. The bald eagle stays. And what he did last year, I'm going to get into this in just a second to kind of wrap the video up. You can make an argument, excluding Chuck Bednarik, because that's not modern day. We'll look at modern day linebackers for the Philadelphia Eagles, because Bednarik is on for almost everybody, the Mount Rushmore of Eagles. You can make the argument last year with Zack Baun was the most impressive, dominant linebacking season a Philadelphia Eagles linebacker has ever had. And I'll have some stats there to kind of back it up. But not only is it just stats, it's the context to those stats that make it so important, because he ends up a Super Bowl champion at the end of the day, and we don't win a Super Bowl without Zack Baun. So when you look at the Eagles' big 4 free agents, why is this deal so much important in comparison to the others? Is that, we got Mekhi Becton. I still want to be cautiously optimistic that we can work something out there. I do think on the open market there's going to be some teams that are desperate for linemen that might be a little scared of Mekhi Becton on the Jets. He still has maybe a little stink of that reputation. They don't know what they're getting. They might be scared that Mekhi Becton is just thriving in the Philly environment, thriving with Stoutland as a coach. Stoutland's getting the best out of him. And what he does in Philadelphia might not be the same if he goes to, a team that's desperate for line help. They might be like, oh, we're going to get the Eagles Mekhi Becton or the Jets Mekhi Becton. So if that's how the market could play out, that absolutely will be in the Philadelphia Eagles' favor. But ultimately, Mekhi Becton's replaceable. We have the best offensive line coach in the league. I think many people would be fine with Tyler Steen starting. I think many people will be fine if he leaves, that Stoutland will figure out that right guard spot. That's just what he does. So, by that regard, I'd love to have Mekhi Becton back, but for all intents and purposes, he's replaceable because we have Stoutland and we have Steen. You got the defensive side of the ball. Josh Sweat, awesome story, man. Had a brutal knee injury in college, slipped in the draft, came to Philadelphia. Was he a 4th-round pick? And ended up becoming a great starter, reliable starter, big moments, Super Bowl champion. But the fact of the matter is, we have a pass rush rotation. We have Alex Hunt, who came on late, who's putting it all together. We're optimistic. I'm not saying that he's going to be able to take 100% of the snaps, but we have pass rushers in the pipeline. Bryce Huff, hopefully that he figures it out if he remains on the roster. We have guys that should be able to take over those reps to a degree. Milton Williams, he was always going to be gone. He's going to get a huge payday. But the fact of the matter is, Milton Williams he's not the best D tackle on our team. He's not Jalen Carter. He's part of a rotation. He's a rotational player, which part of our rotation is why our defense is so freaking good. But he's still a rotational guy. You don't destroy how your team is built for a rotational player. And when you look at Milton Williams, you look at a position that we will value during the draft, that we will address first, second, third round. We will go somewhere on the defensive line. We have Moro Jomo, who, much like Alex Hunt, showed lots of flashes last year that I think not directly could take all the snaps over, but I think most of us think that like if you took 100% of Milton Williams snaps and gave 60 of those to Moro Jomo, I think we're cautiously optimistic that it could work out. Probably need to find another guy. It's definitely going to be a tandem effort. I don't know if that's Thomas Booker or whatever, but we have players, and it's a position that we can prioritize and figure out in the draft. But when you look at Zack Baun, there is no one on this defense that can do what he does. Not only that, it's a position that we just haven't had a big hit rate at finding good players. We have Nakobe Dean, who's pretty awesome last year, but throughout his entire career hasn't been healthy. Your best ability is availability. We do not have that with Nakobe Dean. Plus, going into next year, when is he going to play? When is he going to be ready to play? It could be October, November, right? Like, he definitely won't miss the whole year, but when is he going to be ready to play? Big question mark. Oren Burks would be an interesting guy to bring back. I thought he was pretty damn solid. Probably wouldn't cost an arm and a leg. Trotter Jr., he could probably get a couple more reps. But none of those guys are Nakobe Dean replacements. None of those guys do what Zack Baun does. None of those guys can cover, can rush the passer, and can just control the middle of the field the same way that Zack Baun does. If we lost Zack Baun, we would feel that hit more than any of the other big free agents, and I think by a considerable amount. So it was paramount that we bring back Zack Baun, and I think there's an element here to the Saquon extension. Play well, Saquon got paid. Zack Baun came here on a one-year deal to find himself, played well, got paid. That's going to speak volumes to potential free agents, to potential agents of said free agents, that if you go to Philadelphia and you perform, you get paid. And in the world of, you got bag chase, you got Milton Williams. He's going to be a bag chase. He got himself a Super Bowl. Now he's going to want to go to the highest bidder. Probably doesn't give two shits about what team pays him. Be like Dave. Maybe Arizona, maybe reuniting with Gannon. They got a lot of money. But for the players that need a fresh start, for the guys that were first-round picks like Mekhi Becton that need a fresh start, that want to try prove-it deals, these prove-it guys. There's those guys every single year. They're going to want to prioritize coming to Philadelphia because they're seeing what happens in real time. It's not hypothetical situation. It's not, well, if you do this, we'll put some incentives and all this stuff. You get paid in Philadelphia if you play well. And I think that is going to be a vital part and piece that we're gaining as from a reputation standpoint for Howie Roseman and this team. That those are the guys that they're the difference makers. Those 1 year guys that we used to just miss on. The Darius Leonards, the Robert Quinns, these just the Golden Tates, these 1 year Hail Marys that weren't working out. We have found a formula to find these 1 year deals, these prove-it guys. And it's been proven, and they've got paid. That is going to help attract more of those guys. And those are the guys that you sprinkle in the roster, low cost. You get way better play than what their pay currently is, like a Zack Baun. And those are usually the guys that tip your roster in favor of the other top teams. So having that reputation, what we've been able to accomplish, it's awesome. It's not the story, but it's kind of the story right now from the last 2 days for the Philadelphia Eagles with Saquon Barkley and Zack Baun. Not so much Saquon, we knew he was going to be good, but rewarding him right away, that's going to speak well. And I would say, at minimum, kind of view it if there's a tiebreaker, if teams and players are looking for tiebreakers, I think Philly's going to be winning a lot of tiebreakers, regardless of the fact that we are a Super Bowl contender and going to look to try to run it back for those ring chasers. But back to Zack Baun here. Now, this is Pro Football Reference. Awesome site, awesome utility. On their site, they have something called approximate value, which just tries to throw a number value for how well a player played. And last year, Zack Baun made the Pro Bowl, first team All-Pro, 5th in Defensive Player of the Year voting, which is ridiculous. And I admit, anytime we talk about our players, I talk about Eagle players. There's bias. I'm biased towards our play. I think, at minimum, he should have been top 3. Right now, off that, if it was Heisman voting, he wouldn't have got the invite to New York. He should have got the invite to New York for Defensive Player of the Year. I also think that if Fred Warner, maybe not because the Niners didn't make the playoffs, they're pretty shit last year. If Roquan Smith had these stats, leading that Ravens defense as one of the top teams in the AFC, I think it wouldn't be said easily. I think he wins Defensive Player of the Year because he's Roquan Smith that put up this type of stat line. So, in the hearts of at least Eagle fans, he was Defensive Player of the Year last year. And they gave him an approximate value of 18, which is, I use this site a lot for my Madden content over my other channel. 18 is insanely high. Like, that is one of the highest AVs I've seen in a minute. 151 tackles, 3.5 sacks, 5 forced fumbles, 4 PBUs, an interception, and the context of these. A lot of times, linebacker's a weird one, right? Because you have a lot of like casual fans be like, well, look how many tackles he had. Like that's not an indication of whether or not he's a good player. Zack Baun had the game-ending sack week 1 in Brazil against Green Bay. He had a dive-in interception against Jags, which was a very weird game for the Philadelphia Eagles. Kind of game that like previous years, 2 years ago, Eagles team would have probably lost that one. Zack Baun with a huge pick, huge momentum shift. He had the 4th down stop on Jaden Daniels in our first win against the Commanders, which is monumental. 4th down stop in the 4th quarter. Turnover on downs. He had a huge sack against Lamar Jackson in that huge win on the road against the Baltimore Ravens when no one could bring down Lamar Jackson. Every pass rusher looked like Bambi on ice, but Zack Baun brought his ass down. He had the interception on Jordan Love in the Packers wildcard game. He had a forced fumble in the NFC Championship. He had the interception of Mahomes in the Super Bowl. So he had a ridiculous season that those stats were sometimes the difference maybe in winning and losing games. Not just garbage time stats. Winning and losing. And then he arguably played better in the playoffs than he did in the regular season. So in modern day, the only other linebackers the Eagles had that had a season even remotely close. You have Seth Joyner back in 1991, where he was surprisingly 5th in MVP voting, 2nd in Defensive Player of the Year. He had 16, 110 tackles, 6.5 sacks, 2 fumble touchdowns, 6 forced fumbles, 3 interceptions. Great year. But only 16 AV. Axeman was on fire. 2000, 2001, the final 2 years of his Eagle tenure. This was, kind of remember it. You know, I was 8 when this happened. But 17. That's the second highest because Concrete Charlie. I mean, again, this is modern game, right? But he was All-Pro, second team All-Pro, however you wanted to break it down. But I think you stack up the year, the fact that it's a Super Bowl champion, the fact that he was so integral in the playoffs on this Super Bowl run. In my opinion, that was the best season a linebacker has ever had for the Philadelphia Eagles in the modern game. And we got him back for less money than Tremaine Edmonds on the Bears. It's awesome, man. It's just, you know, I'm so happy to be an Eagles fan. I'd be so annoyed. Like, when you see the Bengals, like, struggle right now, like, how are we going to keep everyone? They're pissing off T. Higgins. You see all these teams, you see the Chiefs having to offload talent. Like, when the Chiefs got rid of Joe Thuney, I get it, right? First thought, I was like, wow, that's weird. He's, like, their best line, and they got absolutely dominated in the Super Bowl. You want to be weaker at that spot? And then it's like, oh, well, he's 32, won a contract extension. But I just, like, that would never happen with the Eagles. Howie Roseman, like, finds a way to keep everybody. Like, if you are integral, you get kept. And I just think that would be so frustrating, looking at that from, like, a fan base afar. Being like, how do they keep doing this? I think, and the more I think about it, the more let's just brace ourselves that the whole Myles Garrett thing is likely a fantasy. I don't really know. It could happen. And if it does happen, of course, it would be Howie Roseman that figures out how to get to happen. I think that should be treated as a pipe dream at this point. But you never know, right? This could be something that drags itself out past the draft, past free agency, and then we figure it out. I truly think that if Philly gets Myles Garrett, like, we are going to be the most hated team in the league next year. Like, we will trump. Like, I think everyone, for the most part, very similar to when the Giants stopped the undefeated Patriots. Everyone, even Eagle fans, are like, all right, you know what? This one time, I'm not going to hate you. I might not like you, but I'm not going to hate you if you can beat the Patriots. Felt like there's a little bit of that last year for the Eagles against the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. Everyone's like, all right, if you know, hate the Eagles fans, but I'm rooting for them because fuck the Chiefs. But I think if we get Myles Garrett, we are going to be more hated than the Chiefs. We're going to be more hated than any team in the league. Sucks to suck, I suppose. But that is fantasy. This is factual. Zack Baun is a member of the Eagles. Love it, man. What do you guys think? What was your favorite play? My favorite play from Zack Baun, honestly, I think the fourth down stop on Jaden Daniels was my favorite play. Because that was a game where it just felt like the scrambling ability of Jaden, we just couldn't contain it. You could never get home. It's your classic dual threat quarterbacks on one. And then Zack Baun was like, nope, psych, fourth down, smashed him out of bounds. Maybe in the context of the season, you can honestly say out of all the things I mentioned, maybe it's the least impactful play. Wasn't a turnover or anything like that. Wasn't in a playoff game. I think that was my favorite play. I'd love to hear your guys' favorite play in the comment section below. What do you think the Philadelphia Eagles do from free agency now? Are you pretty much prepared to lose Josh Sweat and Milton Williams? Do you think we bring back Mekhi Becton? Do you think maybe we look at Isaiah Rodgers? Slay hasn't ruled out coming back to Philadelphia if the money's close with maybe the Lions, the Ravens. I'd love to hear what you guys think about it. What do you think the Eagles' plans are for free agency? Let me know in the comment section below. And until next time, it's your boy C4 saying peace out. Love ya. Subscribe. Have a good one.